You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold. Today we welcome in Jeff Siler, owner and partner at Siler Ingber, LLC in Mineola, New York, out there on Long Island, practicing personal injury. How are you, sir?
Hey, good to see you. Thanks so much for having me.
Likewise, I'm glad we could set this up. Good to see you. Thanks for coming on. So Jeff, as a starting point, just tell us where you're from.
I'm here my entire life. I've been born and raised in and around New York City. I was born in the Bronx. Since I've been married with my own family, I've been on Long Island for the past 30 years. So I'm a local boy.
There you go. That's awesome. And then, so you went out to Rochester for college, though, right? Like, how did that sort of end up?
I don't know how it happened. It just sort of happened. It was, that's a long time ago, but I did end up in Rochester for 4 years. Great town, great people. Western New York is great. Enjoyed it thoroughly, but I knew I wanted to be a lawyer and I wanted to practice in this area, so I came back to New York City for law school.
Gotcha. And that's kind of cool to like come back to where you're from and practice law because, I think you have a lot of connections maybe, and you can serve your community, right? So like it can be an important thing to go back to, where you're from and
absolutely. I tell all my young kids and the lawyers I see and young people I talk to in the practice, if you know you want to be a lawyer and you know you want to be in a certain area, you should go to school there. Because graduate school in general, law school certainly, but graduate school in general is about making connections.
Right.
You're going to get the same legal experience in terms of your knowledge at any accredited law school in the country. The difference is going to be, can you volunteer and can you intern in courts, with law firms, with different corporations in and around the area where you want to end up. And if you can do that by going to school in Chicago, if you want to be in Chicago, or LA for LA, or New York for New York, you obviously should take the opportunity to try to work and go to school in that area. And that's what I did. I came back to the city because I knew I wanted to be here.
I think that's great advice, actually. So like, did you have a moment in your life where you said, I'm going to go to law school? How did that work for you?
It's funny. I've never been asked that question. But I sort of did in a way, almost the anti-way, Benny, though, because I hated science. I hated blood, right? And I knew it was doctor for me was out.
Right.
And I was always good at, maintaining an argument and making statements clear. So I sort of in the middle of college, I realized, this is what I want to do. And, I think people that have an interest in connecting, whether it's marketing, in the business world or in law, certainly have a talent to express themselves.
Yes.
And over the decades, it took decades of experience, but then you learn to argue positions on any side of the coin if you have to.
Right. So when you were in your undergrad days, did you take any classes to prepare for going to law school?
I wouldn't say prepare for law school, but I took courses that I felt would help me be exposed to arguments, to making litigation type arguments in an environment that was not a courtroom. So, for example, there were lots of pre-law courses I took, but also some of the best courses I took were in psychology and sociology and courses that gave you a background of understanding as to the human ability to think and how we come to our arguments and positions, how our backgrounds, definitely create biases within us that we don't even know.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And you may be talking to someone who has a position on something because they grew up that way and they're experienced it their whole life. And I see that with my clients now.
So just to jump ahead a little and then go back, but do you experience the bias piece with the jury?
Absolutely. 100%. And where we are here in lower New York State, we have tremendously different jury pools. So we have the city, we have, pools of people that rent and people that don't own property and people that may not have full-time jobs. And we also have jurisdictions on here where it's very conservative, where they don't like personal injury suits. They don't want to hear, even though someone may have been hurt badly due to someone else's negligence, they're the kind of person that never wants to sue and never wants to be heard. And those biases, you have to really struggle through to help your client. And
Right.
it's very difficult to sometimes to try cases in some of these conservative venues, even if your client has a great case and is badly injured and you want to get them compensation, you got to deal with biases. You have to know how to get around it.
Do you often try to change the venue when you think that's going to happen, or no? Is that difficult?
In our area of law, it's difficult. You can try to change venue, but it's not like a criminal proceeding. There's no bias. There's no inherent right to change the venue. Venue is often dedicated in New York by residents of the party or where the accident happened.
Gotcha.
It has to be in a certain one or two areas.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense. So let's go back to your New York law school days. What was your law school experience like? Is that something you could share?
Sure. It's funny. I just had a conversation 2 days ago with a great client whose daughter is being accepted to law schools now.
Very nice.
And one of them is New York Law School, where I went to school. And he was asking me about it. And she, I think, wants to practice in environmental law, which is kind of far enough away from where I am.
Yep.
But my law school days were, it was a business to me. It wasn't really school.
Okay.
Law school is a 3-year commitment, but quite frankly, it's a 1-year job for school, which is kind of difficult for people to understand. But you have to understand, after the first year of law school, you either make law review, you're at the top of your class, or you're not. And for the next 2 years, for me, it was focusing on getting a job, making connections, interning, and doing as much as I could to be exposed to as many firms, many businesses as I could to market myself, right? And that was the most important thing about law school to me.
That's really,
and I still use that every day.
That's so smart. Like, and I've read your bio, top of your class, like law review. Like, how did you know? Like, because the way you just put that was very succinct and could be very helpful to a law student, because some people, believe it or not, they do look at law school as an extension of undergrad, but you took it very seriously, and you knew that you were like, it was. So that's not the retrospective perspective. That's you when you went into law school. You're like, okay, I'm going to work my butt off.
Yeah, and it's not because I'm so genius or smart. I think I had a great mentor. I had a person who had been a lawyer for decades, and he was someone who told me early on that law school is about helping people getting a job, and if you need to be where you're going to end up. So if you want to experience college and you live in the East Coast and you want to go to LA for college, that's great. But if you want to stay in New York, ultimately come back here. And I think it's very helpful to have mentors, because when you're 18 to 22 years old, even though you think you know everything, quite frankly, you don't.
Yeah.
And it takes us all many years to learn that, right? But I try to impart that now to younger people all the time, because you have to know going into law school what it's really about. And it's about knowledge, of course, and getting that basic understanding, but it's also about finding your path, whatever that path may be.
Right.
And quite frankly, your path might change 2 or 3 times in the course of law school. And that's okay. That's fine.
Right.
If you're in the area you're going to end up, you have a much higher likelihood of getting an internship and getting a job.
So after you were really, dedicated your first year, and you studied, and you said you marketed yourself years 2 and 3, which is just, I think like all law students should really know that, should take that on. Like, where did you end up as your first job out of law school?
My first job out of law school was with a firm in New York City that did a lot of defense work for medical malpractice and corporate work. And it's kind of a funny story, because that firm went out of business within 6 months. And it was the early 90s.
Wow.
And they were hiring kids out of law school.
Wow.
And within 6 months, they sent out there was no email in those days, or it was limited.
Yeah.
Sent out a memo to everyone saying, hey, guess what? Merry Christmas. And we were out of a job. So that was a challenge.
Did they shut down? They shut down.
They didn't shut down fully. They splintered off. So the firm broke up in many different ways.
Okay.
And it went off. And I ended up getting the job through my family. My father-in-law
Okay.
had the practice,
Okay.
a defense law firm, a firm that specialized in defending personal injury cases.
Okay.
And I just sort of ended up there and spent the next 10 years there.
So he was doing personal injury. That's great. So when you got to the point, second, third year in law school, like, did you know what kind of jobs you were looking for? Were you looking for like a big firm? Did you want to go into personal injury?
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny, Benny. I did. I thought that it would be great to work for a big corporate firm or a big white shoe, that expensive white shoe law firm. And boy, was I wrong. I mean, for me personally, that would never have worked. But that's what I thought everyone should aspire to, and that should be everyone's goal. You make a lot of money, fast, and you work hard, but that's not how it worked out for me at all. I went to ended up being a small firm, making virtually no money, but I had great experience. And now looking back after 30 years of doing this, I counsel kids all the time. If you want to work for a big firm and you get that job, fantastic, good for you. But if you want to be a litigator, that's not the place for you. The place for you is some smaller place where you can gain experience much faster and much more hands-on.
So at what point so you worked with your father-in-law for like 10 years, you said, right? So like at what point did you say, I need to open my own firm?
Well, about the 10-year mark, 7 to 10-year mark, I was fortunate in the sense that I had a lot of what we call portable business. I had a lot of clients that I generated myself. So I kind of knew at some point that there was a point where I wanted to move on, and I knew I wanted to be a plaintiff's lawyer. The defense end of this business is great, but I tell clients all the time, actually, that one of the main benefits of my experience in my firm is that I've tried a lot of cases for both plaintiffs and defendants. So if you have a car accident case or a trip and fall case or a labor law case, whatever it may be, there's very few litigators who are doing this 30 years who have the knowledge, the experience of trying that same case, Benny, on both sides, right? For the defendant and for the plaintiff.
Sure.
And I've done that for car accident cases and triple fall cases. So I have that. I know what the other side is thinking and how they think and how they operate. And that's great experience. I kind of fell into that, quite frankly. It was lucky, but looking back, it was great experience.
And that's kind of like the defense attorney or prosecutor that switches sides, right?
Right,
like
exactly.
In a way, I mean, obviously different parts of law, but you learn what the other side's thinking and you can anticipate a little bit.
Correct. And it's great benefit. I think it happens a lot more in the criminal world, which I don't handle at all. But I think a lot of the prosecutors, spend, 5 to 10 years, in the DA's office, wherever they may be, and then they switch sides and they do, defense practices.
Right.
And I mean, they were able to help their clients. Let's face it, they have connections to the DA's office. They know the people there. And they also know their tactics.
That's a good point. So now you have a staff. You have do you have like 5 or 6 attorneys?
We have a staff of about 10 people all in.
So and you're a senior partner. So like this is a little not really off topic, but I'm just curious. What is your advice on how to be like a good boss, like how to manage people? Do you have any advice with that?
That's a great question. And I think that's a daily learning experience, to be honest with you. It's very hard. Patience is certainly one of the biggest things I preach, and listening. I listen a lot more now than I talk.
Okay.
I'm on a podcast right now, so I'm trying to talk, but I try to listen 2/3 of the time and speak 1/3 of the time.
Okay.
Being a boss is about making sure people are put in the right positions to do things.
Right.
I see a lot of the times when people fail in a task, it's really not their fault. It's probably my fault because I didn't put them in the right position to accomplish that task.
Right.
So having the knowledge of how to do something, I can do any task I give out in my office, from answering a phone to filing a lawsuit. I've done, obviously, right? So if the person I give to do it doesn't do it right, it's probably my fault. It's probably my fault in a failure to communicate properly and make sure they understand what it is they were supposed to do and how to do it. And again, that took a lot of years to learn that. But to be a good boss, you have to listen a lot and guide a lot.
And boss and leaders. So it's sort of being like a leader too, right? We could say.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all trying to accomplish the same thing. I mean, we're here to
Right.
help our clients.
So one thing I read that I liked, because there are a lot of firms out there that'll just do volume and take a ton of cases and try to push them off to people who do try cases, and then they'll try to settle quickly. But what does it mean to you to be a trial attorney, not just one that settles their cases? Because I know you go to trial a lot, you're not just looking to settle. So what does that mean to you? Like to take these cases to trial, to get the full victory verdict and judgment for your clients?
Well, I'll answer that question by giving you a little bit of an example.
Yeah.
We had a case a couple of years ago with a young gentleman, about 25, 27 years old, an immigrant from Honduras, had a very serious accident, fell off a ladder, was very badly injured. But he had that attitude in life about he was going to get better. And he had a young wife and a couple of kids. And this man felt like he had to resume his life. And he fought like hell medically to do that. He had multiple surgeries, he had multiple points in his recovery that he had setbacks. And his case never settled. We took his case to trial. And it went to verdict, and he recovered a significant amount of monies. But I don't think he understood. There was definitely a language barrier there at some point. And once we sat him down afterwards and explained to him what had really happened in terms of the money, he broke down crying. And he was a kind of a slender guy, not a big guy at all. And his wife was with him. And he was sitting in my partner's office across from me at the time. And I remember looking at him, saying to him in limited Spanish, "It's okay. You are going to be fine." And he looked up at me and he thanked me. And you could tell when someone has such a gratitude that they could never have imagined in their lifetime having accomplished something, that now it's done. It's a fait accompli now. And I'll never forget that look. That look for me is all about what we do, because you took someone who was in a really bad place, emotionally, physically, financially, and you brought them to a place that they never dreamed they could be. It doesn't happen all the time.
And so when you say that, what do you mean? Like financially, like you took it to trial and you made significantly more than you would have via settlement. Is that what you mean?
Millions more.
Okay.
Right.
Wow.
And that changed his life.
Yeah.
Forever.
Yeah.
That changed his family.
It's interesting because you kind of just touched on my next question, which is, you deal with a lot of cases with people who are in car, truck accident, slip and falls. So like, what kind of an attorney do you need to be to handle these people who are like so vulnerable and they come to you? Like what characteristics do you need to possess?
Well, I think one of the biggest things you have to have is empathy, right? You have to be able to put yourself in a position where their needs come first. These cases take a long time, Ben.
Yeah.
It takes 2 to 3 years, 2 to 4 years even now with pandemic to bring a case fully to trial and get it resolved. So empathy is a huge factor. People call every client in every case. Of course, their first question is, what's my case worth? How much am I getting?
Right.
And there is no answer to that question. Any attorney that tells you on day one of your case that they're going to get you X dollars, they're lying to you. They have no idea. There's 1,000 factors that go into the value of a case.
Right.
And no one has a crystal ball. No one can tell you how all those factors are going to play out in the next 2 to 4 years.
Sure.
So the most important thing I believe in terms of dealing with our clients is you speak to them straight all the time. You tell them exactly what's going to happen to the best of your knowledge.
Yeah.
And you have the confidence to let them know that you meaning ourselves, are not 100% clear as to how things are going to work out, because we can't. There's no possible way of knowing what is going to happen. For example, a pandemic happens, which the courts close for the next 2 years. So there's no possible way of knowing everything. So check your own ego, listen to your clients, pay attention to their needs, because ultimately, if you satisfy their needs, the case will resolve satisfactorily.
Right. Yeah, totally. So empathy, communication, see what your clients need.
Right. Communication. Yeah, that's funny, Benny. That's a good word. We use that word here almost every day.
What's that?
Communication. The most important thing is to communicate.
Communicate. Yeah.
Communicate, because that's how you avoid problems.
Yeah. Oh, that makes total sense. And so you've taken these while we're on the trial lawyer sort of topic. Like, was there a trial lawyer that like you used to look up to? Like, is there, because you've had some incredible like 7-figure verdicts, right? And so like,
I listened to a lot of older guys that were in court. In the older days, you could go into court and sit there in the gallery and just watch and learn.
yeah,
And there were a lot of guys that tried cases decades ago that were much older than I, very successful people on both sides, plaintiff and defense.
yep,
And you just kind of pick up things here and there. I couldn't even name them at this point, but
yeah,
I definitely spent time in courtrooms watching and listening and taking notes. And by the way, everyone should know, courtrooms in every state in the country are open, they're public. Every trial is a public event unless the judge closes the courtroom, which is very unusual.
right.
People have constitutional rights to an open courtroom, an open trial. So go ahead, take advantage of it. Listen, learn.
I think that's a great idea. I think that's great advice. So you have a lot of medical knowledge, and I think you need to in this field. Like, how do you obtain all that knowledge besides the experience that you have?
Well, in personal injury, if you try the case, you have to understand what's wrong with your client, right? So a simple broken arm, a broken leg, that's one thing. People can understand. A jury can understand, well, he broke his arm because something hit it and it healed. Right. But if you're talking about what we call soft tissue injuries to the ligaments, injuries to your spine, injuries to blood vessels, those are much more difficult for the average juror to understand.
Sure.
So many years ago, I started doing, my own, I wouldn't say research, I would just say trying to learn more about how this body systems operate and work. And that's proved to be very helpful to me in the past decades, because a lot of guys don't do that. They don't spend time doing that. And you mentioned earlier that a lot of law firms take a case and refer it out to some other law firm, or they try to settle it fast.
Right.
But the way you build a case for a client is to make sure you understand fully what they're going through. The medical aspect of it is critical, because that's what's happening to them. On an average Tuesday, a client can't do something because they're medically unable to do it. Well, why? How many lawyers call their clients and say, well, why can't you do that? Why can't you raise your elbow enough to put on your shirt? And the answer is that there's tears in his shoulder, and the ligaments are not connected properly at that point, and they don't allow him active range of motion. But if you don't know these things, you can't help your clients. And I always liked medicine. I didn't like the blood part. I wasn't going to med school, but I liked learning about it because it made me more effective, arguing on their behalf. Yeah,
no, definitely. I think that's you definitely have you have to know a lot of medical about the medical field and injuries to be able to really represent these clients. So that's definitely something that good to have in your tool belt. So what differs with your firm than another firm in say Manhattan or Long Island? Like, what would you say you have the edge on?
I don't want to say we have an edge on anyone, but I do think we have a very active practice. Okay. I think one of the best compliments a lawyer can get is from his client and former clients. And we have a lot of what we call referrals. So new business coming in that's referred to us from older clients. Okay. So a client had an accident, 10 years ago, and unfortunately they now know someone in their lives who had an accident. Right. And they refer them back to us. And that to me is a great compliment. And we have the ability to track that. So I know that, for example, a former client referred this case. And I sometimes call and say, thank you very much. I appreciate the thought. And the responses I get back are that, you were always very kind to us. You picked up the phone and you answered our questions.
Nice.
And for especially the younger lawyers out there who might be watching this, one of the biggest things you can do to help yourself and help your own practice is pick up the phone and talk to your client.
Yeah.
Listen to them, make sure that they know you care. And I don't know if a lot of lawyers spend the time to do that. And if you just spend half your day or less of picking up telephones, talking to people, listening to them, trying to understand what it is that's affecting them in that day, and helping them that day. Tomorrow's going to come.
Yeah.
And we'll deal with tomorrow. But what's happening right now that I can help you with? And that's kind of a micro version of what separates my firm.
Okay.
But let me tell you something. You do that every day, and that becomes a macro solution to a lot of problems.
Yeah, it's interesting, especially the whole pick up the phone thing, because a lot of people might text message their clients, maybe they email, leave a voicemail.
Yeah.
So I think that actually is pretty significant, because a lot of people do want to get a phone call and talk to a live person rather than a text message.
Absolutely. And I have kids and they don't even know what a phone is. They just know how to text and I don't get it. I mean, pick up the phone, answer questions, ask questions, and get information. And that's the most simple way of solving problems. And again, it's like most complicated things in life, right, Benny? It's not hard.
Yeah.
Just listen and pay attention, and the answers will come.
Right. So I was going to ask about advice to trial lawyers. I think that's good advice for a young lawyer to actually still make that phone call. Do you have any other advice for a young trial lawyer or a trial lawyer right out of law school?
Yeah. I mean, I would like to have happen to them what happened to me, which is that go to a place where they're going to let you try cases. And what I mean by that is that, again, a lot of lawyers, especially in big cities like New York, they want to work for the big white shoe law firms.
Yep.
And those law firms do not try cases.
Right.
They're afraid of trying cases. They would hate to see someone like me in a courtroom, because I'm the guy that can try the case. And I win, I lose. It happens, of course, both ways. But if you're a young lawyer and you want to try cases, go to a small law firm that's going to allow you to get into the courtroom. Take depositions early. Sit and learn from older lawyers. And fortunately, hopefully the pandemic is winding down, but a lot of businesses, a lot of law firms have been remote for so long now. These young kids aren't getting FaceTime with partners in law firms and senior partners in law firms. And that's, I feel for them, because you need to have that FaceTime.
Right.
So you're able to be exposed to them.
So you're still going into court?
Yeah. I mean, it's been very challenging for us
with COVID.
2 years.
Right.
Yeah, with COVID. Right. Courts were shut down here for well over a year.
Yep.
The way I describe it now, Benny, is that it's like the faucet is on, but it's trickling. It's not a full blast of water.
Yep.
It's trickling on. So there are appearances and trials happening, but not as many as we need.
Right. And so as senior partner of a law firm, people could still depend on you coming to you, and you'll take their case to court. Like you'll actually make the appearance. Yeah,
if we have to. I mean, for trial purposes, absolutely.
Okay.
I have, of course, associates that work for us and handle cases on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, absolutely. And a lot of firms don't do that. A lot of firms where they simply send their associates in for everything.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's great, Jeff. That's really good for you on that. So like you've represented clients in over 100 jury trials in 25 years. Curious, how would you say the practice of law has changed since you started going to court? Like, is there anything nuanced or significant that you could see as a change?
That's a great question. I think everything's changed. I'm not even sure anything's the same, quite frankly, from the early 90s. But one thing that's definitely changed for sure is the use of technology. Everyone has access to information in a much faster, almost real-time experience, right? Yeah. So if you have the ability to communicate to a jury with technology, with aids that can show them a shoulder, a ligaments in the shoulder, how it's torn, how it's ruptured, it becomes much more real for them.
Right.
They can see a picture rather than just a skeleton. The old days, people used to bring in a human skeleton and try to show things. Now we have.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I've seen that on like TV and stuff.
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
They wheel in the skeleton, right?
Right. And now we have abilities to make that much clearer and much easier and much faster, because people can see it, they understand it, and now they say, oh, well, that's why the guy can't raise his shoulder, or whatever it might be. So technology is huge, for sure. Another thing that's changed, dramatically over the years is the volume of the business, the volume of cases. The courts are so much busier now than they've ever been.
Really?
That you have to be able to move quickly and know who to deal with in the court system to get things done.
So is that because people are more?
Jurisdiction.
I'm sorry. Is that because people are more litigious? You think?
I don't know about that. I think we've always had a system where the courts were open to people who were injured, but I just feel as if there are so many more cases in my neck of the woods.
Okay.
And from what I'm told from colleagues across the country, the same thing exists in every major city in the country.
Okay. So what would happen today if you rolled a skeleton into the courtroom?
I don't know. I'd laugh. I think I would laugh.
I don't know. You might get like good. Jury might think it was funny.
Just to try it, actually.
It's amazing.
I think that a judge might. Judges typically have seasoned levels of experience, so they may laugh at it because it kind of harkens back to their days. But now with laptops and different types of smaller computers, we can use visual aids, put them up on a screen in a courtroom for the whole jury to see, and it makes an inviting picture for people to look at.
Got it. So Jeff, is there anything else about your firm that you would like to share with the Lawyer Stories community, or anything in general that we've missed?
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity, Benny. I mean, I think this is important for people all over the country to be able to know lawyers in different jurisdictions, right?
Yeah.
And I may handle a case in New York that you may handle in Massachusetts, but
right.
If I get a call from someone who's in Massachusetts or Chicago or Tennessee, I need a place where I can refer people to.
Right.
So for that alone, I think it's very helpful for guys my age, for us people. But for younger lawyers, I would definitely say listen to these podcasts, watch them, because you can gain experience in what to do, how to do it, what to do, and go into court and listen and pay attention to litigators. I mean, obviously, if you're a corporate lawyer or if you're an environmental lawyer or whatever, it's a totally separate issue, and this advice really is not relevant to you. But what we do, litigation every day, for the average person who's trying to bring a case into court, you have to be familiar with the courts. It's critical.
It's very good. Well, you kind of hit it on the head. Like that's what Lawyer Stories is trying to do. I'm going to network everybody, lawyers to lawyers, cross jurisdictions. Hopefully this will be a referral source. And if you or your staff is on Instagram or Facebook and sees somebody that you need to refer to or wants more info of somebody I might know, that's always a pleasure of mine to connect you with them.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah. And because I'm sure lawyers who are watching this now, they're going to have opportunities to refer cases out to other jurisdictions.
Yeah.
And I know I did. For example, I had a case that happened in Georgia. A friend of my wife's had their parents got in a really bad accident down south.
Wow.
You have to be able to make referrals to people out of state to help them. Yeah,
absolutely. So we'll keep you posted more about what's going on with the Lawyer Stories community and how we're going to officially set that up. Hopefully you'll be a part of it. So, it was a pleasure speaking with you. You have a great story, great advice, great attorney.
I really appreciate it.
So I really appreciate everything. Stay right there. Everybody out there listening, thanks for tuning in. Wherever you are in the world today, enjoy yourselves. Cheers.